We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk, 1180, 1230, KGEO, 1410, KARI, 1000, KKIM in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and across the nation 3 times a week on KNUCmedia.com. Our guest on our final show is an old friend of the program, Brian Johnston, the Regional Director of the National Right to Life.
Brian, this is Clay.
Hey, Clay.
Let me give you an example of how abortion is changing America. Currently, in the United States, it's 1.3 births per family. In the Muslim community, there's 8.3 births per family. And it's projected that in 2045, the U.S. is going to be a Muslim country. That's statistics that'll scare you. And the only reason that we're not going to be a Muslim country earlier is because the Hispanic community has a birth rate of about 2.5.
Wow.
So abortions are changing America.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, they are indeed.
Yeah.
They are indeed.
Well, you know, and the other end of that, too, when you look at, say, for example, the number of people it takes to pay one Social Security benefit for an individual. You know, that number's gone down. It used to be 6 people working for every person collecting Social Security. It's down to, I think it's 2.1 or something outrageous like that. And that's because we've literally killed off the next generation.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's scary.
No, these things have grave consequences for the future, and it's very important that Americans wake up really to our founding principles. And our founding principles are that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all are created equal, endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, the first of which is the right to be alive.
Yes.
And when that was thrown out in 1973, it changed everything. Ronald Reagan said it well. Coming up on his 104th birthday, by the way, and in February.
He and Clay are the same age.
Oh, what's that?
He and Clay are the same age.
But I'm still here.
Well, hang in, Clay.
Yeah.
We're proud of you. But Ronald Reagan said it's the first right without which there can be no other rights. And so, yes, these other implications for our culture are very, very dire, and they're ominous. But the real threat is that the founding principle of our nation was lost in 1973. That individual human lives have inherent value. They're not given by the government. The government doesn't give you value. It is the value that you have inherently that gives the government value. And that its ability to protect your life determines the value of the government. So this is a fundamental premise. The right to life is a fundamental first principle on which government is built. But most Americans don't get that. They're busy out paying for their boats and watching American Idol or whatever they're doing. And there's a grave cost for that.
Exactly. Brian, I've got something I want to throw out to both you and Clay here. And this is something that's kind of been on my mind the last couple of days regarding this issue and Obamacare, because in some ways they're related. Okay, so here it is. We had this budget thing coming up again. And I was looking at the Republicans thinking, okay, maybe they can just do a continuing resolution till February and then turn around in February when they've got control of both houses, defund Obamacare, which would, defund the abortion part of it. So I'm looking for that kind of leadership, and I didn't see it, and I'm thinking, okay, here we go again. Are they not going to do anything about Obamacare? Are they not going to do anything about the abortion issue? Is it going to be a business as usual Congress, and all we're doing is looking at Democrat light instead of Democrat heavy?
Well, I think, and again, there's a lot of implications to this, and you're very right to bring up Obamacare, because that is the problem with Obamacare. It's the government saying, we're going to determine which lives are valuable. The government's going to determine who gets health care, and when you're talking about health care, it's your life. And so it's very important for people to realize the severe nature of Obamacare. The problem, again, though, is that whatever Congress does, the President of the United States of America, regarding this bill, regarding his bill, is going to veto it. And so it's very important to realize what we want to do is be wise, and I think we're going to see several bills go up to Obama that he's going to veto. There's little doubt in my mind that's going to happen. The problem is what's going to come of that. And so we're going to see court cases. I believe there's several court cases right now in the pipeline that are dealing with Obamacare, and we really have to tenaciously hang in until that happens, because we know that the chief executive is going to kill any good bills. So it really, at this point, it has to be the courts. It has to be the resilience of Congress to insist that he be the person to face it and that he veto it. And we've already seen from this president, he doesn't care. He's not up for re-election. So he already has the resolve, and he's announced that resolve. The question is, will Congress have the resolve to continue to force his hand? And in the meantime, it really is the courts that are going to have to help us in this window. But it's important that in the meantime, people understand the nature of what's happening, the ideas that are being enforced and being pushed down on. So we haven't even seen the full implementation of Obamacare, and that's what's scary, is that this doesn't even really go into effect till 2017. And again, for folks to understand, it's health care, and the government that determines the health care of your physical body controls literally your life. And the government is controlling the lives of the individuals entrusted to its care. It's the exact opposite premise on which our nation was founded. So we're living in a collectivist world that unless we are willing to assert the basic premise on which America was built and continue to reassert it, it'll be forgotten. So it's very important that in these next 2 years, it's going to be a challenge.
Definitely.
It's going to be a challenge, but we need to understand what are our founding principles, why are they important, and how can we creatively reassert them and reassert them and reassert them so that state by state, where we will be having victories, and then ultimately on the national level, we can reassert the right to life and the values that America has held dear.
Exactly. We're having a conversation with our old friend, Brian Johnston from the National Right to Life.
Brian, on March 4th, I understand the Supreme Court's going to take up the issue of subsidies for those states that are federally funding individuals on the Obamacare. Now, if for any reason that the Supreme Court rules against funding of those subsidies, what does that mean? How are they going to get the money back from these individuals that they previously funded? And what's that going to do? That will destroy Obamacare because of its own weight, I believe.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't know fully what it means. There's been such a spaghetti plate of confusion, all these different strands that even the authors didn't know what they were. We already know this. We already know that literally every member of Congress that voted for it had no idea what was in it. So how can we figure out if those who made it don't know what it is? So I think you're right, Clay. It can't hold its own weight. It is built on a false premise that this was going to save money, and it cannot possibly do so. The only way to save money is to insist that certain people not get treatment ultimately, and it will be the government bureaucrats that make that insistence. So this whole scheme is flawed from the beginning. It can't stand, and we have to hope that what happens in March really brings its death knell. But, it's the rebuilding. I think that's something we as Americans have to recognize, because it isn't just Barack Hussein Obama. It's an ideology out there that we must now as Americans rebuild the values. And the only way to rebuild is to assert the essential values that our founders had built this nation on. And we need to continually assert those and bring them forward so that people of conscience can actually act on them. But we've got a lot of work ahead of us.
One way for Congress to help everybody in the United States would be to vote based on what's best for the country rather than what's best for them.
Gee, what a novelty idea.
That's right, and that is exactly right, and that is what's best for them. And our nation is built on the intrinsic value of every person. So when I vote on those principles, instead of voting that, I want another check from the government, when I vote on the principles that, no, the government's role is not to hand out goodies. The government's role is to respect the value of every life. To protect that life. That is what's going to help us. And again, back to Reagan, all other rights, my right to be secure, my person, papers, and property, my right to keep and bear arms, that only has meaning if I have a right to be alive. So by building on that premise and building on what the founders gave us instead of the collectivist form of government that we've been encouraged to believe in, which is false. The idea that, the government needs to care for you. No, it isn't the job of the government to care for you. The job of government is very clear, to protect your life, your liberty, and your property.
Get out of our way.
Deprived of that without due process of law.
Exactly.
Get out of our way.
Brian, I want to thank you so much for, I think this is about the fourth time we've had you on in the last 4 years, and I've had the pleasure of interviewing you over the years. And again, thank you for your friendship, and thank you so much for what you do with the National Right to Life and the other organizations you're involved in. Appreciate you, Brian.
Marty, Clay, you guys are great. We're going to miss you, but I know you've got other stuff you're moving on to, so we're excited for you.
Thank you, Brian. We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.